Good. We think? All right, let's go ahead and call the Thursday, May 1st Parks and Community Services Committee meeting to order. Thank you all for joining. Let's see, I'm just looking at the agenda here. Although it's not listed, we do have a public here. Do you want to make a public comment, Tim?
I do.
Okay. Now, or would you rather wait until we get into the meat of our discussion when we have Tim here as well? It's kind of your choice, I think.
I would rather go first, and I may
Okay.
not stick around because I've got an appointment.
We all
So-
have lives. Okay, well, I'd like public comment first, please. Anyone in the audience? Yeah, Tim.
Thanks very much. And thanks, Parks Commission. So I've had a chance to see the total ask, which is a big number. $576,000, which is a bigger thing than you've seen before. While I can't speak as a budget committee member today, I am a budget committee member. And I would recall that last year in the budget process, we very quickly approved a much larger ask than your committee submitted, which I think allowed us to fund every project, if I'm not mistaken, that was on the slate last year. We have massive budget reserves. And even in the budget that's proposed, I'm going to tell you something that's probably different than what Tim Collier will tell you. But in the budget that's proposed, we are still adding $500,000 to reserves. So I'm going to work very aggressively through the next few weeks and various meetings to make sure that important projects get funded one way or another. I'm aware that there's a procedural issue perhaps with the Cannon Beach Academies application. There may be a lease issue that needs to come up there and be discussed with the city. I mean, this is a city-owned building, and it just seems incomprehensible to me, maybe to you, that they're being asked to make capital additions to it. I've been very involved with the Elk Creek Terrace issue reluctantly, not something I really want to do, but we can't let that place fail. And they have an ask in front of you that's outsized relative to everything else. So just to kind of recap, staff makes a recommendation, which is $140,000. Budget committee does what they want. And there is a lot of momentum in the budget committee to take care of some of these asks, I believe, without having had a budget committee meeting. I just talking back channel. So I would encourage you to build a spreadsheet, which you already have. I'm looking at it. That says if we're funded at $576,000, this is what we approve. If we're funded at 500, this is what we approve. If they're, go maybe in $50,000 increments or something like that. And give us the flexibility to make things happen for your committee, because you're making things happen for the community that are important. So I'm just asking you to not feel limited by this $140,000 number. Means nothing. It's something proposed by staff. The budget committee can do pretty much whatever they want to with it. Maybe I'll just spend just a second on Elk Creek Terrace. This is a big problem. They're almost out of money. And one of the things that they didn't do a very good job, I've seen the grant application, they didn't do a very good job of highlighting. But this is the first 2 units of a series of, they got to redo them all. And the problem is they got to move people out of units. Now, not the 2 that they're asking you for money for, because they're empty right now. But they've got to renovate these 2, move existing tenants into them, and then keep going. That's a bigger picture. That's a bigger topic than something you can deal with today. But the ask, while large, is really integral and important because it's kind of the first step in a chain reaction that has to happen to bring these things back from the brink. There's a bigger discussion there, a bigger discussion with the council. But it may be that this should be funded out of the Affordable Housing Fund. Nobody's really looked at that. We have 400 grand in the Affordable Housing Fund, and we could do that. But it doesn't really matter where this is funded from. And I'm just encouraging you to be creative. So give us your feedback in the form of a spreadsheet that would say, if approved for the whole amount, this is what we would do. Because you're the ones with the expertise on the specific requests. And some of them may not be worthy. That's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right, any other public comments? I think your note said if they wanted to do it via Zoom, they had to let you know ahead of time. Did you get any?
I don't see any other participants, so
Okay.
it's just Betty and.
All right, thank you, Tim. We'll move on with our agenda.
I will let you do that. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Tim.
To the extent you want to look at that, please do.
Thanks.
All right, thank you all for being here. This is the first of our community grant special meetings. I wanted to quickly take a look at our calendar and remind everyone the next to do would be, let me go back. Today, one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we elect or we select which of the applicants we're going to invite to speak to us on May the 9th. And we'll get into that. The primary reason we might not do that is if someone felt like their application was incomplete. And I think you've probably all seen my notes on that. We can go through that here in a minute. So today's May 1st. Tomorrow, Sherry will notify, unless you've already done it, we'll notify the applicants of when to show up, I think on the 9th. Well, is that a true statement, Sherry?
Yes.
Because you don't have a schedule yet, have you?
I've produced a schedule, but that depends on you guys on your voting of who
So,
moves forward. So I have not set it out. All that I sent out was the place and the date change.
yeah, I saw
So
all
that
of
they have
that.
that.
Thank you. So, yeah, so that'll work very well. That needs to go out tomorrow, a week ahead of our meeting on May 9th, which will be at the chamber. And that'll be face-to-face interviews, 15 minutes apiece with each applicant. Yes, Anita?
I just had a question for clarification. So this invitation that we're discussing today, is that for questions that we have? So not every applicant needs to come before the committee, or is this, if your application is in, we want to talk to you?
So thank you for clarifying that. Every applicant has to show up.
Okay.
I mean, they can do it via Zoom, but that's part of the requirements is interview.
Okay.
Now, in past years, and I'm speaking a little bit on my own experience, we have discussed in this meeting if there are like specific questions that we would like more information on and shared that back, or we would share that back with those applicants. Their packet had to be complete or we wouldn't do it. I don't recall we ever took advantage of that part of what we say we're doing today. But if someone's got a burning question for one of the applicants, once we've decided that their application is acceptable, then yes, we could talk about that and then get the questions back to that applicant that they would then give us the information on the 9th. So did I ramble too much?
No, I guess I was going in the direction that, they've been a previous applicant and we pretty much know the organization, we know what they're doing and whether it's really necessary, since we have 22 applications at this point, for everyone to come before the committee and try to designate a time for them. So that's where I was
Yeah,
trying to find out.
Yeah, I
process.
see your point, but I feel pretty strongly that the way the process is currently requires them to show up. Now, we could talk this year and if we wanted to amend the process and grant some leeway to people who've been here in the past, but that's not the way the program, sits today.
Right.
And we have, in fact, we've had at least one applicant that I know of lose their possibility of a grant because they didn't show up. So
Okay.
that's kind of the way I see it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so May 9th, we will have the interviews. May 13th, the preliminary members worksheets are due to Sherry. And I think everybody's already probably got the blank allocation worksheet. We might discuss Tim's request here directly. The 15th, we have a meeting just amongst us to discuss what we've all said, how we would like, each individually would like to allocate the funds. And we need to discuss that.
May 15th is our committee meeting, is our normal committee
I
meeting.
thought it was the 14th. I've got that. My
Okay.
notes is the 14th.
I'm looking at the, there's been some fluctuation, I get that. It really would not be that appropriate to discuss in a public forum the preliminary grant allocations. I think that we would be sharing information that very likely would change.
You could probably make it the same day as the worksheets due to me,
Well, or
but
could,
it's 5/5.
or could we do it, like I've seen the council do, where they have a public meeting and then close it for some purpose?
Yeah, we could do that.
What do you think as a group? And the reason I don't want to share it is one of the reasons that we added this meeting was we've had a couple of iterations where we had such wide discrepancy between what individually we allocated to a particular applicant that they actually came into the council and questioned us. Well, why did you do that? And we hadn't had a chance to actually talk about amongst ourselves, why did we do that? So we couldn't answer their question. And so the purpose of this meeting is really just to make sure we're all not necessarily on the same page as far as dollar amounts, but we all understand what we're doing. Does that make sense? And I don't feel comfortable doing that in front of the public.
And I would have to ask Jennifer just for, make sure that we could do that. I'm pretty sure that we do but I have to post it in a certain way. So
Why don't you make a
give it Jen.
to-do on that one, and then we'll decide how to go forward. But once we've had that meeting, which might be on the 14th or the 15th, whatever it is, then the final worksheets are due to Sherry on the 20th, and that actually will be the numbers that we will present to the council as our recommendation. So that's the way I see the process going forward. Are there any questions or thoughts about that? It is pretty compressed, but intentionally so that we can try to get these checks out as quickly as possible. Yeah, Betty.
I feel that, well, since what Tim said makes me feel like we don't really know how much money we have to make any decisions. So I love the idea that we we have more money coming, hopefully, but I still feel kind of handcuffed into knowing what is our limit so that we know. Otherwise, I'm just going to say everybody gets what they want, because during these hard times, I don't feel like limiting people because they're getting limited every single place they look right now.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, Betty, but even without the two big asks that we've kind of talked about, the school and then Elk Creek, we've still got over $220,000 worth of asks. And we're only, at this moment, only requesting 140,000 out of the, for the budget. And so the fact that we don't know how much money we're going to get has always been true at this point. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but the first budget meeting is the 15th of May. So we're having our conversations a little bit before their first chance to talk. And I'm not quite sure how that's all going to play out. It's one of the reasons I wanted Tim to sit in here. I've also shared a few thoughts with Bruce, the city manager, about, this is a very unusual year.
And I
Lots of big asks.
think, if I'm okay to speak.
Yeah, of course.
I think what you guys need to really look at is, does it belong in the parks grants asks? I think there's a couple that need to go in a different direction. You're not saying that they can't have funding,
Yeah,
but does it really belong in our parks community grants?
I
For the
absolutely
purpose
agree
they
with
have.
that, Sherry. Yeah.
That's what I would look at.
Yeah.
And then not necessarily deny the application, but go to the city and say, this needs to be done, but I don't know if it belongs in the grant process.
Great.
this will be new in my experience, but I'm thinking the same thing. I don't think there's any ask in here that I'm not supportive of in one way or the other, but there are some that I don't think that we are the ones who should. But we can always bring that recommendation forward. I mean, at the end of the day, nothing we decide is a done deal until the council approves it.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of, we just need to have those conversations, think about what we want to do. But today specifically, we need to focus on, was the packet application complete and can we accept it? And I have a couple that I had concerns on. I hope, that we can talk through and make sure that we can move forward on, everybody, or if we're not, then we need to we'll inform them that their packet wasn't complete, and that'll be the end of their piece of this.
And I did bring all the packets, so you
Okay.
guys, like the sealed.
Okay, so are there any other questions procedurally? So we've got I think as a group, we can decide, do we want to get Tim Collier to stick his head in and we'll talk about some of these big items and what his 2 cents is on how we might approach it? Or we can go ahead and look at the spreadsheet I put together and just kind of I'd like to talk about the concerns I have. And then anybody else who has found discrepancies or missing pieces or whatever, this would be the time to get it out. Any preference? I was only thinking that it might be better for Tim to have, if this was a better moment, he could come in and we could talk about it.
Can we go get them?
At least ask him, and if he doesn't have time right now, then we'll talk about the spreadsheet real quick.
Oh.
Well, not only next door, the balls are very thin. Hi, Tim.
How are you? Good.
Well,
Good to see you.
Good to be here. So since you've heard every word we've all said, and I recognize that
I just heard the Tim Collier. I think Les was calling me in.
So Tim Ramey made a public comment relative, not as the budget committee, but recognize that he was on the budget committee. I'll just tee it up with my own concerns. We've got two great big asks, neither of which I think fit our purview very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to do. Generally, from a personal level, I'm supportive of their needs.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that, I don't know how to address it. And so
Sure.
I appreciate you being willing to come in and visit with us about what we as a Parks Committee could do.
Sure. So I've been thinking a lot about this and kind of what is the approach I would recommend for the committee is I would take the two big asks, which I think are the Academy and the Elk Creek Terrace, right? And those are two that have, while they meet the general description inside the kind of the mission, they're unlike anything really we've done before, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that's exactly true for the Cannon Beach Academy.
Okay.
Generally, many of their asks have been for what I would consider, required maintenance on the building or the grounds.
Okay.
Because they simply have not been able to fund it.
Okay.
But yeah, the other one, the
Mhm.
Elk Creek, that is
Right.
something we've never seen.
So my recommendation, I think, would be that those are like a subcategory for you or as the committee, right? So you remove those two, which puts you at what?
About 220.
About 220. So then you go through with the remainder and how you want to split that out amongst the rest of the asks. And then what I would recommend is telling council we recommend that these be funded, but they probably need to be funded some other way, or at the council, it's really more of a council policy almost, right? That they're gonna put money into those. So I think that's how I would approach it. Because, and you can say as the committee, we think these are really important and we would like to, but it's kind of a little bit different than anything we've ever done, and they're very large.
Yeah.
So we'd like to be able to fund
Yep.
these and then we would recommend that you fund these, but it has to be through maybe another source or you say the committee's okay and we'll add $350,000.
So what do you think, and this is just my question,
Mhm.
should I, as a representative of this committee, talk to the budget committee when they get together, just to tee up, we've got these two things
Mhm.
so that everybody's aware of kind of the path we think we're going to go down? Or is that a separate, we don't need to do that. It'll be perfectly adequate for us to make our recommendation. We're supposed to talk to the council on June 11th.
Okay, so we probably want to
So
we want to do it before.
The two
because
processes don't,
Yeah, don't
jive
drive up
very
very well. So what I probably would do then is, let me think through from a process standpoint, because our first budget meeting is the 15th. We'll do public works. So, you could do it during start with the public comment and tell them what you're going to do. And that the committee supports the two projects, but from a funding standpoint, it would need significantly more funding.
Sure.
And then just go through what the rest of your process was.
I mean, so first of all, we have not discussed as a group whether we support
Okay.
them. So I
Okay.
don't want you to leave thinking we've
Okay.
already made that
Okay. No.
decision.
Okay.
That has
That's
to
fine.
happen. But what do you as a group think about that process? We'll take the two big asks, set them aside, and we'll actually work on a spreadsheet that totals about 220 and allocate out our money on that basis.
I agree
Thoughts?
with that. I feel the two projects, even though I support them, the Parks Committee is not, I think, the place to fund them. And whatever the quickest way to let council or I don't know who else, the Budget Committee know that, I guess is appropriate, but I hesitate getting the Parks Committee too involved in that process and decision making, that it's here, we don't think it's here, so we're gonna hand it off to whoever needs to have it to take it where it needs to go next. And we just focus on our usual process of community grant allocation. My 2 cents.
I agree with your 2 cents.
You know, and
Yeah.
then the capital improvements, I totally agree with Tim, you know, as far as Cannon Beach Academy is leasing that building, and as a landlord, I mean, the roof and that sort of maintenance is on the property owner. So I don't know what the lease says, but that seems like that should be addressed before whoever is gonna fund it.
We've looked at the lease, specifically, Sherry has, and I had seen it prior. That actually is the terms of the lease. I think it's very, I don't know what the right word is. It's a very severe leasing term that the city gave the academy. And maybe that was appropriate before it actually was in place, but it's been in existence for several years now. So I would like.
For a dollar.
Yeah, but
Well, okay,
At least
so,
for a buck.
so maybe maybe I should take pros and cons. Right, that's fair enough.
What did Tim say?
At least for a dollar.
they pay
No,
$1.
they don't. Well, I looked at their budget. I think they're paying $3,000 a year.
Not to us.
Well, and Tim
Well-
should, he sees the money.
Okay, I'm just saying that
So we,
anyway, that I think we should say, okay, our low income housing is super important to us right now. And having a city school is really a gem and important to our city. How much do we want to support them and how much do we want to tie their hands? Because, you know, we have to put them prioritize whether we're going to really support them or whether we're going to make it really difficult for them.
well, why don't we, Betty, we're not gonna solve what we're gonna say to the budget committee or to the council on whatever date I just said, today. But let's agree that as a group, we will decide what recommendation we want to make and how we want to, you know, what we want to say when we make that recommendation. I'm not opposed to what you're saying about prioritizing, you know, support for the school or for affordable housing in either case. But we don't need to decide that today.
Okay.
And I do think if you as a committee do agree that you support the project, these two large projects, just like we are in support of it, I think that has a little more weight with the council also. Say, hey, we just don't think it's the right spot.
Yeah, and I think it is. And, you know, I went back and reread all of what's in our code concerning the Parks and Community Services Committee and what our purview really is. And we talk a lot about parks, but we actually are supposed to be covering community services as well. And we really haven't done much with that. But it fits very well in that piece of what we, so our purview is, I think, covers making the recommendation. And I'm perfectly happy to do it. So we'll work through them individually and we'll come up with what we need to do.
Okay.
But I just want to get one more agreement from everybody. We will take these two pieces out, as Tim has suggested. We will work with 220 plus change, and we will do an allocation. Or maybe several allocations, as Tim suggested, but that's what we can do. How do you feel about that?
I feel a lot better than I did yesterday.
Well, we're gonna try to, you know, I mean, I have made it no secret that I love giving away other people's money. There's not a problem for me.
Well, I
Right.
think that too, when we say community services, when I read into that, when I became a Parks member, one of the things that encompasses is education. So it's education, it's community services, for instance, housing, I would assume. Anyway, so
It does. I mean, if you read the detail that's actually in whatever it is, 2 point something in our code, what we're supposed to be doing includes affordable housing, you know, taking care of people that need help, you know, education. It
We're
just hasn't
supporting
really.
those, aren't we just supporting those organizations that is their nonprofit mission. I mean, we're not supposed to be doing it, but we're supporting them.
Well, I think you're right, Anita. I mean, it doesn't require us to do those things. Other than the ECFR, which has got its own set of, requirements and goals. But generally, I think though it's just, I would just say that that's the kind of issues that this group should talk about.
I absolutely agree, and that's where I think I brought up the Parks Master Plan and reviewing that and seeing what we can get started on, especially as far as trails, bike trails, and that sort of thing. And see if some of the suggestions are even that we have the ability to do it. I think I brought up the bathrooms that was recommended to put on the stairs going to Haystack Rock, which I feel is not a worthy effort of Cannon Beach to try to figure out how to put bathrooms there. So anyway, just an update. So that's where, I mean, I'd like to see this committee go in that direction a little bit more than just having two, the community grants and then the 12 Days of Earth. And I think we could probably be more effective in recommendations looking at the Parks Master Plan.
Well, we talked about getting together and reminding ourselves what the master plan contained.
Mhm.
At the time we discussed it, there were still 12 days and community grants ahead of us.
Yeah.
Let me and look at it with Sherry. I don't know if we want to put it on this coming agenda, at least to tee it up, the master plan, or if there's something else that we may want to talk about more, but I have no problem with spending time, committee time.
Well, we can
Looking
get through the grant process first, and then we've got the rest of summer and fall and winter to explore the master plan a little
Yeah,
bit.
what I was thinking was, I can't really yet, because I can't say that we'll put it in next month's agenda, but I certainly think that the following one a lot of this will be behind us, and
Yeah.
it would be a good time to
Yeah,
do
that'd be
that.
great. That'd be great. Thanks.
Something like that. I think that's great.
Okay.
Okay,
Super.
Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
Unless you've got something more to
I have
share,
nothing more.
I think your
Please let me know how I can
voice
help.
of wisdom has been, you've calmed the troubled water.
Excellent. That was the goal. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Tim.
thank you.
All right.
All right, so I will make a note about Parks Master Plan. I think I need to go back to my notes. Seems like we also talked about another big document that we had kind of talked about, but that may be what it is. It may be the master plan that we said, we really need to get to review this because many of us don't remember it. Some of us may never even have seen it. I don't know, but, okay. Okay, so before I move on, and I don't know, before I move on, is there any other comments or thoughts that anybody'd like to share?
One thing that I was going to bring up if we were going to discuss this community action request was that this is probably something that would need to go to the DRB, which was another reason I didn't want to really touch it at this point, because I think that they've got a long ways to go to get to the process of refurbishing those two apartments. I wasn't sure how long they'd been vacant, so I really appreciated Tim kind of guiding us to the fact that it's not really for the Parks Committee at this point.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think you're exactly right. The thing that Tim mentioned that's not at all in their application, but made perfect sense to me is, because I knew they were gonna really struggle to find places to put those 34 other units that are occupied. But now that they've explained that they're trying to have two, that they can roll people through, well, that makes sense. But they didn't say that. As far as I was concerned, I was just fixing up two-bedroom apartments for them to go out and rent.
Yeah, I watched the council meeting for that again, and they are applying to OCHS for a grant to refurbish that complex. You know, so it's not just the parks, and it wasn't clear to me during that council meeting when it was suggested that they come to parks that it was for what they're asking. So I think there may have been a misunderstanding because the water credit was what was really on the table for discussion. And so that's where it's just not clear to me, other than a misunderstanding, why they are applying to the parks.
I completely agree. I think it was 100% misunderstanding on, you know,
Okay.
on what was being suggested and what they have come back with.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other thoughts? The next thing I was going to talk about was just take a quick look at my spreadsheet, which I, overworked it because I'm an engineer and that's what that's part of the degree. But I did go through and try to look for the required pieces of our packet, and I had a couple of things that I wanted to discuss, and then I'm open to anybody else. I don't personally think we need to go down line by line. I just like to talk about the ones that we have concerns about.
Sure. That
Would
works.
that be okay?
Yeah.
And you've seen mine, but does anybody else have a concern outside of what I may have noticed? And then we'll talk about those first.
Well, one of the things that I find difficult, and I'm so grateful for your work on this, Les, because you are a man that sees detail. And for me, scrolling through on the computer, scrolling through those papers, sometimes I just get confused of what I'm looking at. And I find I spend hours just trying to make sure everyone has turned in what they're supposed to turn in. And I'm going to ask a question. Uh, if a person has already submitted a grant, so it's just like 12 days, we know we know these people, could we limit what they have to turn in so that our job gets a little easier? If it's a first time, if it's first time, yes, we need the designation for for everything, but maybe every year they just turn in their W-9 and their budget and their line item budget, or something a little less paper after paper after paper, trying to make sure they've done what they need to do. But that's just a suggestion because I just find it adds a lot of time to just reading the grants. To me is the most important. To me, reading the grants, getting that digested. But then when we're spending hours trying to see if they've turned everything in, I just want to see if we can streamline that process. And maybe nobody else feels like that, but
No, I agree, Betty.
Yeah, I think Anita's already said she'd like to see some change to the process. We went through this several years ago. Barb was still on the committee, and of course, she's kind of a accounting nonprofit kind of expert in my view anyway. And so what we're requesting now had a lot of, it actually is a simplification from what was required in the past, believe it or not. And I would not be opposed to talking it through and making some changes. To me, there's a group of people that we know and love, and we see them every year, and we don't have concerns about that they're not doing the work they say they're going to do, and they're not going to go belly up on us. We're not going to give them money and then they disappear. But the newer ones, that's where all of that stuff has to come in. I mean, really need, it's our job to make sure that they appear to be financially solvent enough to carry on the work before we give them the money.
Right.
I agree 100% with that.
I don't think that we need all of that from everybody, but
Yeah.
but we could talk about it. There may be city requirements, there may be other things that we're just not aware of.
On the attorney side, you have to treat a newcomer the same as you would treat somebody that we've worked with for years. You have to, otherwise there's an unfair, especially when you're dealing with money. You cannot treat one person more than the other just because they didn't turn in the information required because it's stated on that document. And I think that's where the document, I mean, I've done grant applications, I missed documents and I didn't get it because I didn't complete the application. So there's definitely the guideline in the get-go that you have to abide by, or you're caught up in, if somebody overhears that this person was accepted because, you know, they already had something else in a couple of years ago, you might get yourself in trouble. So
see.
just,
And so we'll go through all of that, and we'll enlist, you know, the right people to make sure that we're not. Because ultimately, I mean, we're spending a ton of money, and there are some things that we're required as a committee, you know, part of our due diligence, I suppose. I don't know, but I'm happy to sit down after this process and we'll talk about what we might do. My
Okay.
deal this year is, and I think I'm gonna stress it when we get to talk to them. We provide them a checklist. It's on page 3. It's even got little check boxes. And the organizations that use that and check it off as they are without exception complete.
Mhm.
But not everybody does that.
Mhm.
And they're the ones who, you know, who we end up having trouble with. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's just my 2 cents, but I think we can talk about your request, Betty. But that is the reason why we ask for financials as well.
Yeah,
And
I see.
and it's okay that if you're not comfortable with them or you don't, you know, they don't do you any good. As long as we got somebody on the committee who can at least digest some of that, that's why we're a committee.
Okay.
I think with your heart, you probably do a lot more with their description and the verbal stuff they give us, you know.
Well,
So-
that's where I get caught up, you know, is looking at their P&Ls, you know, and then I start going down the rabbit hole of wondering about, you know, that expense and that expense. And I wish that could be kept out of it, you know, unless there's a significant change, you know, that some of this information is just kept on file if they're a repeat applicant, you know.
Well, but it didn't.
I mean,
Well-
that's where like Betty, I just want to see what they want, what they're doing, and happy to support it, you know, and not feel like I'm auditing their books, so to speak, you know, but
Well,
that's just the
unfortunately,
process.
we kind of are auditing their books and,
I don't want
so
to,
here's an example.
because then I have more questions.
Yeah, we had, this wasn't last year, I don't think, but we had, a couple of organizations that, you know, submitted their profit and losses and I did this, so I can speak to it. Both years, they reported pretty significant, profits at the end of the year with no information on what they did with their money. They're making money. And yet they come and ask us for more money, you know, for money, because that's what they're used to doing. And I can't tell you that it changed anything, but I asked the question when they came in and they did answer it. You know, in fact, one of them, it turned out, they had actually had some pretty severe financial difficulties that weren't very well disclosed until I started digging into the numbers. It was an organization that we know and love and continue to support, but we wouldn't have known that without it. So I don't think everybody needs to feel like they have to do that. I mean, as long as I'm on the committee, I look at it, right? And,
You're our,
and-
you're our designated driver.
Yeah. The
as
DD.
good a job as I can, maybe better, because he's used to, you know, looking at
Excel
financials,
spreadsheets and financials.
you know, and
You
so
know, and everybody's financial situation is different.
it is.
You may have an organization that's got a pile of money over here, but guess what? Maintenance is coming around and it's gonna bite them. and they don't have
Mhm.
the ability to reach out there and get that.
Well, and I
money.
think
They
that's-
don't have that nest egg.
I think that's what we were, because all of these nonprofits really need to have an operating reserve for years that are bad. I mean, otherwise they can't survive. And I think one of the ones I questioned, well, that's where the money went, but they just didn't show it. I mean, they didn't tell us that was going on. I will tell you, a lot of these folks that we deal with don't have operating reserves or they're, and, you know, they kind of get by the skin of their teeth.
Mhm.
But a well-run nonprofit, that, you know, there are certain criteria that if we could see them, we should feel very good about giving them money because we know they're going to be there and they'll be back again tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we need. That's one of the jobs we do. We tell the city council we've thought about it and these are the people we want to fund. But, okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, that's good.
Um, So, Cannon Beach Academy was the first line item. Well, let me get back up. Camp Kiawanalong.
Along.
I couldn't say it last year. I can't say it this year. I actually had a concern, but Sherry found their submittal. It didn't get scanned completely. I think there were 2 applications where in the end we found that things didn't get scanned. I don't know if anybody's noticed anything more than that. I know Sherry's corrected it all. So that one, I took off my concern list, thank goodness, because we were not able to fund them last year for something missing. I really didn't want to have to go talk to them again.
Yeah.
All right, so Cannon Beach Academy, there is one item that is clearly missing, and that's their IRS statement of, proving that they're a 501c3. We all know they are.
Mhm.
We know that it's in last year's packet. But we explicitly say that we will not accept it's on file as a explanation.
Mhm.
The other concern I have with the Cannon Beach Academy is that they put 2 different ask numbers on the form. One of them is the big one, the 56,574, but then a smaller one. And Betty, you were able to explain that to me very well. I don't know if you want to explain that to the full group. You're gone away. Turn your phone on.
Muted, yeah.
I think you muted yourself.
What they were thinking is they could do a patch of the roof and then they have to do the fire sprinkler system. So the fire sprinkler system has to stay in as full as they have asked. But the roof, they could do a full roof or they could do a patch. My concern about doing a patch is there, because it's been leaking, is there any black mold in there? Is there any reason that a patch wouldn't be ideal just because I would love to have the whole roof taken off and put a new roof on, just so there's no question that the kids will be breathing anything that might have been created by the leak in the first place. But I don't know that much about buildings, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Tom, you know about buildings.
A little bit, yep. And there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
Which way would you prefer that they went? If you were to be asked?
Either way is not gonna solve a black mold problem if it's, up in
Right,
the
so
attic
if there's a
space.
remediation issue,
There's a remediation.
they're not asking for money for that.
Right, but my preference is always a full roof job
I
as
agree.
opposed to a patch.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can introduce another problem when you do the patch.
Mhm.
So I think the way that we're talking about going forward, where we're gonna pull that ask out,
Mhm.
we can keep it. Because at least at this moment, we're not talking about funding it with community grant dollars, maybe. It's so iffy right now. But that would relieve them of the problem with having one piece not submitted. And in that case, I would continue to talk to everybody, the budget committee and the council, with the big number the full replacement, not, not the piece one. If we end up having deciding we're gonna fund them through the community grants process, assuming we can figure out some way to resolve this missing piece, then I couldn't consider anything bigger than the patch, because we're taking money from a lot of other organizations that equally need and deserve support.
Mhm.
But the way we're talking about it right now, if everybody's cool, we will continue to talk about the big number, and that's what we want to support and recommend. Does that make sense? And does everybody agree with that? Yes, Anita?
Well, that's what I'm not clear on when I was asking about the lease, and you said that you and Sherry had looked at the lease, but I kind of missed what was being said by everybody as far as what the city's responsible for as far as building maintenance.
Well,
They're responsible for the inside and the outside of anything in the structure, so whether it be,
Roof, the sprinkler system.
they're
Okay,
responsible for it all.
so the note I sent to the city, which was a personal communication, was that I would really like them to reexamine the terms of the lease.
yeah,
And I think if we get this ball rolling, that may actually be the solution for the school if it goes the way I want it to go, which is where the city looks at the lease, takes some responsibility for basically the envelope of the building, the outside. And then, they can fund it however they choose to.
Mhm.
Well, I guess that's on the other one, never mind. Tim brought up a good point on affordable housing, but that wouldn't go under the school.
Yeah, so I don't know how other people are gonna come up with a way to fix the problem. That's kind of though why I wanted to get this out in front of the budget committee in the city as early as we could.
well, I
maybe-
guess I would go in the direction that, I'm gonna look at all the applicants that we typically have, and without these two major, we've kind of decided about Elk Creek. But I would also, I guess, based on what I heard Tim say, is that maybe a side budget consideration is that we support, the city needs to find out where the money is, because it's not in the Parks Community Grants. We only have 140,000 to work with, but we want to have that building brought up to, maintenance standards, and the city, either the budget committee gives us that money to appropriate that through the grants program, or you get it through the building budget. But something like that, I think, is where I would be headed. Is, it's kind of a separate issue. We want you to pay for it, but it's not in the 140,000 that we've got.
I would like to, for the long term, I'd like to see the city figure out how to, decide that they would be responsible for some part of the building anyway.
Yeah.
Because
The
like I
sprinkler
said,
system is huge.
the school has come back to us before asking for what were basic maintenance. Not always, but, and I've always struggled with that, but I think it's time to bring it to everybody's attention.
Well, and I think that you guys keep saying the school, but Tolavana Hall is the same way. It has the
So I
same.
was curious about that. So the city doesn't maintain the exterior of Tolavana Hall either?
Tolavana Hall has gotten approval on a grant that they've written years back to fix the building, so you may wanna, it's a bigger issue,
So-
just so you guys know, I
Wasn't
know
that
that.
the inside though? Wasn't that when they were remodeling the inside? They wanted to put a new floor in and new lighting. It wasn't the roof or the windows or the sprinkler system that is a fixed part of the building. I mean, it was more of a remodel from my poor recollection.
Yeah, it was.
There's not a lot of real specific sideboards to what we can and can't consider. And so, how it was written, really, obviously the committee at the time chose to fund it. And for the school, if the best answer is they're gonna give us, additional money so that we can cover the school, I'm perfectly happy doing that
Yeah.
as a community grant, although personally, I would like to to see something a little different.
Mhm.
It's really the other one, the Elk Creek one that I don't think we should touch, but that's my opinion. That's not the committee's opinion.
Oh, I
Okay.
agree. I agree.
Anyway, all right, so we will go, forward holding Cannon Beach Academy's request in the list, but separate. And we will stick with the bigger number because we would support the, full roof replacement. That,
And sprinkler, right? Is the sprinkler included in that?
it is, in fact, they're already doing that work.
Yeah, okay.
We actually would be reimbursing them. They're taking money from their education programs to put in a sprinkler system.
Okay,
So anyway, so yeah, the sprinkler system is a part of that.
okay.
Isn't that right, Betty? I think so.
That is correct. And you know, the thing that's really startling to me is a few years ago, not very many years ago, they put in a brand new sprinkler system, and this company is now saying that some of it failed, and the school itself is being um, charged for that, and there's only one company in Beaverton, so the school's kind of over a barrel with that whole situation.
What it sounds like.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'm not sure I trust the people that are putting the sprinkler system in, but that's the
They should
only,
check their warranty.
yeah. And I mean, this time I think anyway, it's a really sad situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably different places we could point fingers, but the situation they're in today is they're getting it fixed. And, they need some help with money. Yeah. So how are we doing on time? We've been here an hour. Does anybody need a quick break before we hit Elk Creek?
We still need to go over, Seaside Hall, Little Yellow House.
Yeah, I wasn't quitting. I was just
Okay.
saying, does anybody need to step away for 2 minutes?
Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we need to get to that too. Looks like everybody's okay. Tom, you good? All right, I just want to go down the list. So the community action team, Elk Creek Terrace Apartments, we really already talked about that one quite a bit. I'm perfectly comfortable. Their application was complete, by the way, but I'm perfectly comfortable holding them separate. And then talking to the budget committee and the council, that that we support it. And I guess I should ask that question. Is everybody pretty supportive of the work they want to do, or are there concerns about that?
Are you talking about Elk Creek or the school?
Elk Creek. No, Elk Creek. We're past the school.
Okay.
I want to support that project. I was concerned about the nonprofit, but then I found out yesterday that the nonprofit that took it to the ground isn't managing it anymore. There's a new nonprofit, so that made me feel better. And we really are trying to find ways to have workforce housing. So this seems like a good way to push that initiative forward. So that's my 2 cents.
I don't know that the Parks Committee is actually responsible for workforce housing,
I know.
So
I know.
I would just assume the Parks Committee stay out of it until
Yeah.
it gets a little bit farther down in who and what can do something. It probably goes without saying that, of course, we're supportive of refurbishing to keep them habitable. But I just feel that the Parks Committee is not the place to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, that's true.
I personally think they hit on a gray area for us, Yeah, it's a grant that they're looking for, but the magnitude and what it's gonna be used for, I think it just it doesn't fit,
Well, yeah,
It just
I
doesn't
agree.
fit.
yeah. Well, and the way I've phrased it is the way their ask is put together. giving them 10 grand will do nobody any good. Or 20 grand. I mean, the math is easy to do. 140,000 divided by 22 means $6,600 a piece, more or less. So that gives you kind of a target, and there's no way we're gonna give them. I mean, it's just wasting money to give them $10,000 or whatever number you come up with.
Right.
No, so I kind of, what I was thinking, and I'll share it, was that we would say, here's the grant application we got, here's the money. I really liked the addition that Tim made about why it makes sense to do those 2 units, more than just I'm fixing them 2 units that they can go rent now. I think Betty, your point was very important that I wasn't aware of. I mean, the problems that they're dealing with are poor management and deferred maintenance.
Mhm.
And I would not give them a dime without a pretty compelling plan going forward, how they're going to avoid this again.
Mhm.
But I think I agree with Anita and Tom both. This isn't our purview. We might want to include those kind of comments in the recommendation, but that's not what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
We would expect this. I would expect the city to think twice before they give them any money. But I'd sure like to see them rescue that facility.
Mhm.
It needs guarantees.
Well, yeah, I mean,
We're gonna, if
I
they
mean,
come up with the money, no,
yeah.
we'll give you the money, but you gotta do this, and
I
this.
was thinking we needed to insist, we would want to insist on a new management. But Betty tells me maybe that's already been taken care of. And this CAT outfit, although I don't know anything about them, does have a number of different properties outside of this one that I can tell aren't failing. This one is unique in their portfolio. Maybe. All right, so something like that, we don't have to decide today, but something like that would be kind of how we would go forward with Elk Creek.
Can you
You know.
summarize for me?
Well, I think that we would say we're generally supportive of, we think their request is worthy of support. We would generally support that, but we don't feel like the Parks Community Grants Program is the right place to go. And that we had some concerns about how to ensure that this money wasn't, how past problems weren't going to continue. Maybe that's a way to put it.
Well, and I would also add that, I mean, you're talking about that this is going to benefit 2 people because you've got 2 units and you're going to have one name on 2, each lease. So, historically, we're giving grants to organizations that benefit a wider range of people, the community, the county. So that was another reason that I felt like it didn't quite fit the criteria for our community grant program.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and that's why I think when Tim, and we would have to hear it from this outfit as well, was saying that this is part of their plan to renovate the whole unit, all 36 units. But because I've never understood where they're going to relocate the 34 occupied units while they're redoing the facility. They're going to use these 2 to roll people through as they recondition and repair units that are currently occupied.
I see.
I mean, I've not seen it in writing, but that's what I heard Tim tell me. And I know Tim has been in conversation, in fact, has been up to Elk Creek. I think he has had more conversations than I have, but
Mhm.
and their grant application didn't tell us anything like that. But to me, that's a critical difference. It's these 2 units getting fixed are a key first step into upgrading the entire facility, which is apparently all
And
terrible.
totally outside the Parks Committee purview, in my opinion.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
So, so it's
So we're spending a lot of time discussing something that we should just be like, this is great, but it needs to go to another committee or another body for decisions and moving it forward.
I think you're right. I agree. I just have never had the experience of doing this before.
Mhm.
You know, we've always accepted the applications, we've made our decisions, and we've never had to do anything other than that. And then we, you know, this is different, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody on the committee was kind of okay with how we might, because we legitimately can make a recommendation. You know, and it can be as limited as, we got this one, we can't cover it. We'd like the city to take it up. I feel like we ought to put a little more meat on those bones. But I don't want to, you know, I don't want the city, the committee to think that we have to do a whole bunch of work, you know, and so. But I think we've already talked about some suggestions that I would make,
So
but we're not, you know, we're handing it off. I'm not arguing with you there, Anita. It's just, how do we want to go about doing it? Yeah.
Well, and so my thing that I have to get out tomorrow, is this something that you want us to invite them for the presentation? I mean, I need to know, are you guys inviting both Cannon Beach Academy and Elk Creek Terrace to still do their presentation?
Well, there you go. Well, so my thought is yes, I need to hear them talk to us and get more information. And I guess my justification is that we're not deleting them off the list. We're simply putting them at the bottom. Anybody else disagree with that?
agree with-
I can accept that, you know, I mean, I guess it's, you know, we're gonna present them before us to cut them off, you know, so I kind of wonder about that, but I feel also that it is acknowledging that they did take the time to put the application in and to give them a chance to present their case. So I agree with you, Chair, whatever you want to do with that.
You know, this time and one more will be twice that I've gone through this, so. But I really think that we don't have to, I don't feel like we have to say we're cutting them off. I think we're simply saying we don't think that we're the right people, but we're trying to, we're handing them off. And I think that just like Tim was saying, I think that process of that where we say the community grant, you know, the Parks Committee has thought about it and we want to pass these on, we're basically making a recommendation to the city that we support them. Because if we don't, we shouldn't even, we just need to cut them off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
And it's just
Yep.
a matter of what words do we want to use? How strongly do we want to support them? Do we want to share the concerns we have or how we would look at it if we had to? That's probably not in our purview, but we could if we want to. Anyway, but I do think that they should come in and talk to us at this point.
Okay.
I think
I agree with that.
I think you can't exclude them. And the second part is, yeah, I'd like to hear what they have to say, you know, lay it out for me, okay?
You know, this
If
is
you want
one-
my support with the city, you know, and as
That's it.
a voter, you know, yeah,
Well-
tell me your story.
So and that may be, Tom, something that, I mean, because one of the things that we can do today is decide if there's additional or specific information we'd like them to do. And, you know, they might be one that we might send a few notes to and say, you know, we really want to know how, I mean, I'd like documentation of what Tim said, that they have a plan that they just didn't choose to share.
Right.
Anyway, so I think we have spent enough time on this one, okay, unless somebody else has got a comment. Nobody's got their hands up. I have Sea Turtles Forever flagged, although I felt like the application was complete and I flagged it because I never saw the dollar amount anywhere.
10,000, I think, is where, somewhere.
Well, see, the thing
There,
is,
it's somewhere in there, I thought.
I couldn't find it and I looked quite a bit. Yeah, and you had 10,000 on the spreadsheet. Yeah, what?
Maybe
Just
that's where I
for
saw it.
purposes, because I, you know, I can easily miss. It's one of my strengths to miss things. but that's the only concern I had with Sea Turtles Forever. That's the amount they've always asked. But I didn't see it here. And I don't want to assume. So while Sherry's looking at that one, the other one, which I think is a legitimate missing piece, is for Seaside Hall.
Yeah.
And I could not find, well, we need to talk about that one because Sherry disagreed with me on that one.
You guys, sorry. Can you just wait? I have to plug my computer in and I'm gonna have to leave the meeting to get my plug. So
This is a good time for a 5-minute break.
We'll take a break, Betty.
thanks, guys.
You'll resume as
Thanks.
soon as he pops back up.
Okay.
What is this you handed me?
That is Sea Turtles Forever,
Okay,
and this is the city hall.
Seaside Hall. All right.
City
All right.
hall. We're in the city hall.
Tom, do you believe you remember seeing Sea Turtles Forever grant out the amount?
did-
Oh,
I
there it
did
is,
not.
right there. It's right on the top of page 3. Why didn't I see it? Did it not get? Let me look. Turns out I have everything in this magic computer. Sea Turtles Forever. That's it. This is another one where we don't have every page
Weird.
because it's not.
I'm using a new scanner, so
I would
There.
suggest you take them and and see if you can't get us a complete packet. All right, well then, Betty comes, Betty's back.
Yeah.
That didn't take long.
That's quick.
So, turns out Sea Turtles Forever Together packet is missing pages. So. you
from
can
my
pick-
scan, but they're,
Yeah, no, we got them, but from the scan, we're missing. Okay. That will take care of that one. Thank you. And then the last one that I had, I think, well, Anita's not here. Never mind. Well, let's wait a minute. We did give a break.
I'm back.
Okay, thank you, Anita. So the last one that I had to discuss with the group was Seaside Hall, which really breaks my heart because it is one of our long-standing and often one of my favorite requests.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't fit, they asked for $10,000
Mm-hmm.
against for capital improvements. And I will tell you that what I look for was some kind of a list that said, we're gonna redo a bathroom and a dollar amount, and then whatever, that's what I look for a budget, a line item budget detail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not in here. However, there is a line that lists what they're going to do, although it's not broken out piece by piece. Okay, so let me find it. Everything else was good, and this is why I hate paper. I don't do.
I like it.
Well, here, I guess it was on their first page, and maybe where they say the house was built in 1910 and needs repairs and remodeling of the top floor to include an updated kitchen, bathroom, paint and trim, and to pave the parking lot for better accessibility. And just in the text, they've got a $52,000 budget for that work.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking us for 10,000 of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell you whether that our money is allocated specifically to bathroom or kitchen or what. So I didn't see the format that I expected. I flagged it. Sherry and I talked about it a little bit. I think you would have seen it differently than I did. At least that's what I think you indicated. What do the rest of you feel like? Is that an adequate enough information that we know what they want to do with the 10 grand?
Well, I guess, that's where it goes back to, kind of feeling like an auditor and how much we want to police, certainly, historically they've shown, integrity and they've done great things in the community, and how far we want to, question their usage and intent, it kind of makes me a little bit uncertain about how far the Parks Committee should be going, unless there's a specific reason. I mean, I want to trust these organizations to do what they imply they're going to do with the money. So,
Not a lot of trust here, in the way this is managed. This is, or rather, this is probably, what do they call it? A trust and verify kind of system. So one of the reasons we needed that is that one of the requirements is they give us a report after they've spent the money
right,
Mhm.
that we could theoretically compare back to what they said they were gonna do.
right.
Mhm.
And that's I mean, as long as I've been a part of this, that's a long-standing piece of this process.
Right.
Mhm.
But this is a very reputable, you know, uh, organization. We've probably funded them for 20 years, every
Mhm.
year. This will be the biggest one they've ever asked of us. But the risk we run, and the reason I want to have this discussion, and I'm perfectly willing to abide by the group's decision, we can't open ourselves up to one of the other applicants who gets unhappy and says, well, they didn't even put their, they didn't even meet all of the application requirements. They shouldn't have gotten any money, and that would have put more money in my pocket.
Mm.
And I
Sure.
say that because we've already had those conversations in the past. It
Well,
will
and
happen
that's-
again.
That's where I feel like, we should be giving them an opportunity for an oversight, or they just forgot, or, these organizations are typically busy with lots of other things.
Sure.
And I know we discussed that and we denied an applicant, a local applicant, because they didn't have, but that's where I'm thinking that, you've got a beloved organization that has applied year after year after year, and they inadvertently missed a document, that if we can catch that now and give them until, I mean, we're not turning in our recommendations for another week or so, and give them, a couple days, if, we notice that this is missing, you have until, 12 o'clock, 2 days from today to turn in the rest of your documents, and that would help, and help us, from feeling like I have to deny you, I hate doing this, but you didn't get your W-9 in.
Well, I'm not the person to explain. I mean, Sherry, you said you've been in this grant writing business. What I was told was that we neither have the manpower nor the inclination to hold their hands.
Mm.
And that we as a city were somewhat leery of, getting in trouble because we didn't treat everybody identically the same.
Mm.
I don't like it any more than you do, but one of the things Sherry, you can back me up here. There were a couple of these that asked Sherry specifically, is my packet complete? We can't give them that information unless we're willing to give everybody that information.
Well,
And,
aren't we?
and frankly, I suspect I'm the only one who went through every packet looking for completeness. And I'm not willing to share that information.
Yeah. Well, I tried to go through it, but it is confusing to me. So
Why? That's kind of why we ended up having this meeting, so that we can talk it through and and make decisions as a committee. Now, as far as Seaside Hall specifically, although I wanted to see something with a little more detail, I could accept the argument that they told us what they're gonna do with the money.
So I guess
And so I'm willing to say they're complete and move on.
there's a process that you can, in this, the way the process is, you can ask them with the okay with the committee, telling me specifically, I can ask him
For a line item budget.
for the line item
But only
budget,
if we agree that they're
only if
complete.
it's a complete packet.
Right. So, and we can do that. But I think, Anita, the issues you're bringing up are more process about how do we do this going forward. And I think we've kind of already touched on, we as a committee want to sit down and relook at our process again. I think that's come up a couple of times and I think it'd be well worth it. But it will have to go back through the city and the city's attorney. So don't be surprised if there's legal reasons that some of this stuff is in there. I just don't recall.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with,
Yeah, I mean, that's the other flip side. I mean, this is, in terms of grant application burden, they'll never have an easier one than the Cannon Beach application. You know,
That's
and so,
true.
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
true.
anyway, let's keep all those thoughts.
Okay.
We'll get through this process and then sometime maybe a little bit later this year, we will schedule to have a look back and I think that'd be well worth our time. If it can make it easier on these overworked nonprofits, I'm good for that. It can make it easier for the overworked committee members, I'm good for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we do have to meet whatever our minimum fiduciary responsibilities are. And yeah, so by a show of hands, is the, what am I looking at? The Seaside Hall application complete? Yeah, raise your hand if you think it's complete.
I accept it.
I accept it.
You're slow, but.
Well, yeah,
But I think we'll follow up on Sherry's
yeah,
and say, we'd like to see a line item budget when they come in to talk to us.
Yeah.
Show us exactly where the 10 grand is supposed to go. You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, dear. This is what happens though, when you've got an engineer for a chair, you'd be better off.
We
Somebody
love
that-
you, Les. Thank you.
Please,
Better.
you're our hero.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Quite frankly, okay, so I guess we have one more question, and then we'll be done. There are two organizations that we have talked about that we will get Sherry to ask for specific information when they come in. That's the Elk Creek people, and then this one we just talked about, Seaside Hall. Are there any others that any of you would like to ask questions of beyond what they've provided in their packet?
Mhm. I'm not sure about, I kind of tried to understand I'm trying to think, let me look at their name again. It's the one about the food security. Let me see what their name is.
Oh,
North
Northwest.
Coast
Food Web.
Food Web,
Oh, yes.
North
I'm gonna have
Coast. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
So I should not have spoken over you, Betty. I'm sorry. You go ahead and finish what you were saying.
No, I just was trying to understand what they were saying, and to me, that one seemed a little vague as far as the kitchens and where there are going to be kitchen. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, Betty. I was wondering because they kind of implied that they were going to have some sort of commercial community kitchen in Cannon Beach, yet they never specified the location. So it was a little confusing to me. I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up because I kind of forgot about that. Probably have it in my packet here, question, but that would be something that we definitely should ask. I agree with Betty that they weren't really clear on where this kitchen is for Cannon Beach.
Oh,
Yeah.
my understanding is that they've got a kitchen in Astoria, which was part of the prior year's grant request.
Right?
And they're describing a project that they're gonna go out and identify more commercially licensed kitchens that startup companies could use. I didn't get the impression necessarily there was gonna be one in Cannon Beach, but there would be more of them than just in Astoria. My problem with them, well, first of all, they out of their budget, $4,000 is just for project management. And I don't see that they're creating they're just gonna locate these things. They're not really creating anything. You okay?
No, it's okay, sorry.
The other part about it with them is I've watched them carefully. We've always given them some funding. Every single year, it's a different business plan. Now they're
Mhm.
no longer associated with the outfit up in Astoria. They've relocated somewhere different. I mean,
Mhm.
every year, I wasn't gonna send them a note, but I need them to show me some Cannon Beach resident that has benefited from what they do.
Mhm.
They've always offered, we got these plans, we just need to get everything organized. And every
Mhm.
year it's different. I mean, I give them credit for persistence, but I was just gonna quiz them really heavily on, when they came in and said, look, so where, what are you doing? But my question is really, you know, who in South County has ever benefited from this?
Yeah, I agree.
I need a
I-
name.
Well, it
I mean,
sounds like some of the farmers down south, what I got out of it was that they're trying to help that location of food producers to not have to drive all the way to Astoria. And so that their hope is to find 3 underused kitchens, which I couldn't understand where they're coming
I
from.
don't know what those
And
requirements.
so it was just sort of like a wish list of, if you give us some money, we'll find a place type of thing, maybe.
yeah,
Well, let me turn, then maybe because I know, I'm assuming, Sherry, that you would like us to submit to you our questions. You're not gonna write them up for us. I didn't think so. Why don't, Anita or Betty or both of you, why don't you just touch base? Now, the questions have to go out tomorrow, right?
They should go with
With the packet. with the
yeah,
invite.
with the invite,
So is that like a midday tomorrow kind of a thing?
whenever, as long as it's not like
I don't know.
late in the evening.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. Anyway, if you want to, why don't you put together a question or two that would help fill that out and send them to Sherry, and then
Well,
we'll
the
ask
questions
that.
I think have been presented, just like with any of the other places, is that we're looking for more detailed information on the location of your commercial kitchen or
Right.
Yeah.
whatever Betty wants to add. I mean, that's my main question to them.
yeah,
So-
I
And
I
then
agree with
Les,
that.
you wanted to know specifically who in Cannon Beach, so you could add that one. But I don't want to make it too cumbersome for Sherry, so that's where
So-
just letting them know that we need more information. I don't know how exactly that gets worded or presented to the applicants, but that's all
Well-
I'm interested in.
I can't recall we've ever taken advantage of sending specific request. I don't think we did it last year. And I don't remember doing it. It's just a possibility, like the questions that I want to ask, and maybe the ones that y'all are thinking of as well, really could just be handled in the meeting.
Okay.
That's what we've done in
That
the
works,
past. We
yeah.
just ask
So
questions.
if you wanted them to prepare a map showing where they thought they were gonna put
No.
those kids, then you would have to ask for that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is too, is my question is formulated so they are to bring that information along with their presentation.
Yeah.
So that your question, so it's not putting them on the spot when they're in front of us. Basically, they're prepared to answer your question,
Mm,
is basically what that's meant for.
okay,
Well,
Okay.
that's where I would just, yeah. Where's
So-
this kitchen? in
Where's the
Cannon
kitchen?
Beach?
Show me the
Where-
kitchen.
Show me the kitchen.
where's Waldo?
So that segues in really well to something that I have always asked. Please ask questions. Those people come in, they're nervous as all heck. A conversation will always make them feel better. The question, please, on every one of them, if you can, ask them a question. I mean, there have been years where legitimately I'm the only person who's spoken.
Mhm.
Well, you were asking all the questions we wanted to ask, so
Well,
I was
and that's
comfortable with
fine.
that. I was good with that.
Because these are all good people and they're all trying to do good stuff and, they don't need to come into well, you know,
Bunch of
a
different
panel with
places,
no,
yeah.
you know, with no dot, you know, that's intimidating.
Well,
We all
I'm
know
not
that.
looking to interrogate anybody, but I think just, basic general questions, and you always hit it on the head, Les, so I'm happy to just let you ask that, it answers any question I might have,
Thank
usually.
you for that. That warms my heart so
Well,
much.
it's true. It's absolutely true.
All right, so no, we're not gonna send a note to Food Web, but I will send you a note about the questions for the Seaside Hall, which is simply a budget, line item budget detail for the 10 grand or for the 52,000 and where the 10 grand is going. And then, a question of that outfit that runs, Elk Creek, with probably just how does their proposed work fit into their full scheme? Something like that.
That's a
Really,
good idea. Yeah.
are there
Okay.
any others that pop out before we rock and roll? It's 10:30 now, so we're doing I guess we're doing okay.
Good.
Any others that you think might need you'd ask a question of? Well, not a question, but that you actually want to submit. Like I say, I usually find that if they give us all of the submittal documents, I don't really need to ask for anything more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the only one that I did have questions on was that food web. Of course, a lot of these people are people know, so it makes it easier to kind of understand. Like, for instance, the American Legion, we go there, we know what their problems are, so it makes their reading their documents a little easier. But somebody like the food web, they're ambiguous to me. I don't know what they do or who they are, and
Yeah.
so
No.
that's to their disadvantage, unfortunately.
Well, and then again, they've been different every year.
That's true.
I know the first year we funded them to have a food delivery service.
Right. That never
That-
happened.
And well, apparently they're doing it between Klaxonai and Astoria. I mean, that's in the packet, I think. And it's like, well, but how does South County benefit that? Are you going to expand it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I struggle with them, but I always give them money at the end of the day.
Yeah. So is it my understanding that we're going to be asking, what was that number, 22, instead of 140, what is the number we're going to be
Well,
asking?
that's taking out Elk Creek and Cannon Beach Academy, and that leaves a $220,000 ask from the 20 other applicants, giving them all that they are requesting.
Yeah, it's about 220,000 plus a little bit. I did the math. I don't have it right here in front of me. But if we go down to 20 applicants, well, I should be able to do that. 140 divided by 20. So that gives us at least a nominal target of 7,000 apiece. Which, of course we can do whatever we want to, but that's, looking at what other people have asked, that we can probably work with that. We certainly don't give more than the ask, so that frees up some money to reallocate to other places. That's a much more acceptable situation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I guess you want to do your spreadsheet, Sherry, our evaluation sheet that's currently got 22, and then move it, modify it. Yeah, so actually give us the 20 along, in a column on the left, and do your subtotals and everything against that. And then keep the 2 that we're talking about pulling out and put them down below that. And if you want, you can put even a total below that, but that way we know we're working with 20 applicants targeting 140,000.
But anyway,
What is it, Betty? You
Well,
got a
last
thought in
year,
there.
I just want, I think next year we ask for more money because every year it's gonna be more. And we go struggling with 140, but what we really want to say to the budget committee is give us 220 so we can give people what they need unless, you know, unless we feel like they're not going to use the money well. I want to give people what they need because they've gone to all the trouble to try to, you know, ask for what they need. And what Les has done in the past is say, well, what can, well, this, what do you say, Les? You say something like, if we don't give you this money complete, can you
Yeah,
go forward with your project? I guess that's how you put it.
well, yeah, I mean, it's just basically a question of, if you don't get the full amount, are you still gonna be able to use the money? And I don't know how to phrase it exactly. Several of us have asked that question over the years, and some of them, I think it's a very legitimate question. But the ones that are just asking for general operating funds, they can use whatever they can get, but some of them are very specific. And well, like my description of the apartments, to me, that's either give them all the money or you don't give them any money.
Right,
They can't use $5,000 to do anything with. I can
right.
give that to somebody else who needs it and can use it. Yeah, so I think that's a valid question to ask. May not be really pertinent to every single one of them, but most of them understand that they're probably not going to get their full ask amount. Last year was a real anomaly. I've never seen us get an extra 50 grand unexpectedly like that.
But that's not something we're going to ask the budget committee for.
I don't,
It's,
well,
Well,
normally talk to the budget committee. I mean, that didn't come at it from a request from us.
I
That,
know it didn't, but I mean, if we know what we need, I don't know. It's
I
just so
understood
weird.
Tim to imply that we should just put out what we want, the funding that we want for these applications and
Yeah.
let the budget committee decide whether they're going to give us the extra money, although that could set up a scenario that, no, we're not giving you that extra, what is it, 80,000?
yeah, I'd be about
So,
right.
that could present a real problem there too. So we should probably just stay with the 140 right now and dole it
Yeah.
out as we want.
And,
Tim may have overspoken in his,
well,
that
no
just tell the
guarantees.
budget committee what you want and you'll get it. I don't know that was really
He
appropriate.
definitely outspoke there because nothing happens till the council has
Right.
approved it, or what the
Right.
budget committee says.
Right.
But the track record is because the council sits in on all those budget meetings. I mean, they know all those conversations. As far as I know, they never don't approve that because they've had their input already, right? If they have a problem with it, it doesn't even get to the final budget. I like not having to fund everything fully because in my mind, there are things that are asked that I don't think are our purview or I don't think are as valuable as what some other people are providing. And that's just a personal choice. I would not want to go and ask for full funding for all of these. I don't mind going through them and making a recommendation and saying, what we'd really like is $30,000 more to fund what we think is, but I don't want to ask for a full funding because some of these things I think are trivial and not what I want to do.
Well, okay, then what I'm thinking is if you're running a business or whatever, don't you say every year, I'm trying to think of the correct terminology, but every year, if we had, like, for instance, we had 90,000, I think, for 3 years or 2 years in a row, and then all of a sudden we have 140, but why don't we ask the budget committee every year if they can at least add 20,000 because that way we know every year we have a little more leeway trying to fit 220,000 into 140,000. Even those people that ask for 1,500, I don't want to cut them at all.
Right.
but then, you know, I'm saying it makes the people that are asking for a little bit, their little bit is even smaller if we try to do it equitably, and if we don't do it I don't know. I just don't know
Well,
how to,
and then how many applications are we gonna keep getting every year? We've
Yeah,
got 22
yeah.
this year, which is the most that I remember. And then we get more money, and then we're gonna get more applications, and then that decreases the pie for the little guys. And just, FYI here, I feel that I want to give the local community applicants priority. And so I typically tend to give them what they want, and then look at what is more countywide and community oriented for, I guess, Astoria, it seems like. But that's kind of my philosophy. And when I was on the Parks Committee back in the 80s, that was kind of when this program was first taking off. That's what our premise was, is that we helped out the local nonprofits. And then we started getting applications from around the county because there was extra money. So I'm kind of sticking with that philosophy, is that I want to help our local nonprofits before I look to how to divide the other applicants coming from outside Cannon Beach. Whether that's right or
Unless,
wrong, I'm not sure.
well, if they're, or unless their work is gonna be really focused in Cannon Beach, which
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I agree. It's kind of,
I mean, it just makes it easier for me, and it makes me feel
Yeah.
like I'm supporting my community and
right,
the organizations and, trying to help out. But, and I also look at, whether these organizations are getting other grants, from other programs.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Anything else along those lines? Anything else? I suppose for the good of the order.
no, just thank you. This was a great meeting and really helpful, and I'm really glad that we got together to kind of discuss all this stuff. And thank you.
Yeah, it helps. It helps a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And Sherry
Well,
for getting all those copies for me. Makes it so much easier. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So remember, as we move forward, it's perfectly acceptable to chat amongst ourselves. If you want to talk it over, don't turn it into a meeting inadvertently. There's only 5 of us, so that means 2 people can talk, but 3 can't, right?
Okay,
Beyond that, though, a lot of times, these kind of questions, well, should I consider that or not, are resolved if you can talk it out.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, then why don't I call the meeting adjourned? I think it's been worthwhile. Thank you all.
Yep.
for
Thank
sitting-
you, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Bye, Betty.
Bye, guys.
Okay. What do you think? I think we did our
In a better place today.
Happy-
After this meeting.